Hey, Danny, is this your phone over here? That one?
We're about a minute out right now. In fact, we're 1 minute out right now. Seconds. 15 seconds. 5 seconds.
Hey, folks, good morning and happy 2nd of July, 2020. I'm going to talk mainly about the 4th of July this morning. It's my day. I absolutely love the 4th more than any day of the year, and I'm going to explain why. Before I do, let me just give you a couple of plugs about Satterwhite. Don't know where all we've got folks watching from, but a couple of things. We're in desperate need of truck drivers, both in Utah and here in Longview. We're also seeing the surge because of this coronavirus stuff. We're seeing a surge in customers coming in, trying to get out of the city and out into the country and build their dream home. What that is going to do to us, it's going to put us further behind. We're basically 3 to 4 months out on construction right now. I'm afraid it's going to get a little more time lag than that. All right, and something else that's happening you won't think is a good thing. I don't think it's a good thing, but lumber prices are going like that. Our costs are going up. We're immediately about to have a price increase. Certainly nothing planned, expected, or wished. It's just going to be a have to. Our shell construction prices last were rebid in 2018, so we're two years behind, and we're seeing double-digit increases in lumber prices on a weekly basis since the last 30 or 40 days. So there's a lot of anticipated buildup of construction backlog that's hitting the market right now across the United States. So don't expect any cheaper deals than you can get right now. All right, not a sales pitch, just a fact. I'm sorry about that. Back to the deal about needing truck drivers. Our crews need help. All of our carpenter crews are shorthanded. They can always use some help, and I'm going to be real blunt about it. No drunks, dopers. If you're lazy, don't even think about applying, because building log homes and driving, delivering our materials is not a job for lazy folks, and you'll either cull yourself out or you'll get culled out after the first day if you don't want to work hard. Not going to sugarcoat anything about our jobs. We work hard, we work fast. Can't have any snowflakes slowing us down or crying to their mama about the work's too hard. It's hot in Texas too. All right, hey, Danny, we had a new guy that started on Shannon Key's crew yesterday, and he has been off the last 2.5 months. He's kind of like me, a little bit portly, and he's helping me out, or they are, on our house. We're building an extension on the back porch, a big outdoor living area that I've wanted for a long time. We're going to finish that and probably put our house on the market to sell. But we had a crew working in Chakotah, Oklahoma. Problem with logs not being hewn. Customer wanted them hewn, so we had to bring them back yesterday. Hewed them this morning. They're going back Monday morning, but that crew became available to work today and tomorrow, and I happen to have this job ready for them to jump on so that they can make a little bit of money this last 2 days of the week. All right, too much of a story. Let's talk about 4th of July. I mentioned that as my day. I have claimed the 4th of July as my day since 50 years ago, 4th of July, 1970. All right, before I tell that story, I'm going to talk about why we ought to do special things on the 4th of July, and I'm going to go back to one of our founding fathers and second president, John Adams. He was from Boston, quite a typical New Englander. He was a lawyer, a founding father, a very, very special man, like all of our founding fathers were. They had their faults. They were human. So any statues to John Adams may get torn down by these crazies that are out loose now who believe in total lawlessness and anarchy, but expect anybody that has a statue to them to have been perfect, and Jesus was the only perfect man, and I'm getting my blood pressure up just talking about it. So let me talk about the 4th of July and John Adams. Okay. Continental Congress voted for independence on today, July the 2nd, not July the 4th. And then on the 3rd, Abigail Adams sent a letter to his wife. They corresponded back and forth from Boston to Philadelphia constantly, and records of a lot of their letters, which is wonderful history to read. But writing to Abigail, John said, "But the day is past. The 2nd day of July, 1776, will be the most memorable epoch in the history of America." July the 2nd. I'm apt to believe that it'll be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. It ought to be commemorated as the day of deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to God Almighty. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, with shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of this continent to the other, from this time forward forevermore. All right. When he threw illuminations in there, of course, that's fireworks, and that's one of the hallmarks of the 4th of July, is that's one of the 2 days we normally celebrate in America with fireworks, and we can thank John Adams for starting that. Now, it's kind of interesting. The 4th of July, they had gotten back together, and the final document was read and approved. They voted for independence on July the 2nd, but then we celebrate the 4th. It really doesn't matter which day it was, as long as we pick a time to celebrate our freedom. All right, go forward from that period, 1776, 50 years to 1826. Now, I'm one that doesn't believe in, I don't believe in luck. I don't believe in things just happening. I think everything happens for a reason, and there's a time appointed for everything. All right, July the 4th, 1826. Two of our leading founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, died on the same day and exactly 50 years from July the 4th, 1776. All right, Thomas Jefferson was at his home in Virginia when he passed away. John Adams was at Braintree, renamed Quincy, Massachusetts, which is almost a suburb of Boston, and he passed away in his house there. Jefferson died a few hours earlier than Adams did on that day. Of course, you know, they didn't have telegraph and any modern technology, so nobody knew that Jefferson had died. When Adams took his last breath, they could hear cannons firing from ships in Boston Harbor celebrating the 4th. You know, how special would that be? For hopefully the last sound he heard was cannons firing in celebration of the 4th of July. That's wonderful. It is, and of course that's one of the things that he had mentioned, the things that ought to happen on the 4th: shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, illuminations. All right, well, a cannon is quite a gun. And we used to, some of our celebrations on the 4th, we used to have at our ranch, we'd have as many as 6 cannons firing at that. Now, with all that's going on right now, we're going to have a small celebration for, you know, like Danny and his family and a few of our employees here at Satterwhite, and then family. It's going to be a real small celebration that we're going to have this year. In some years, we've had as many as a couple of thousand people out for the 4th. Back to Jefferson and Adams. It has been reported, I've read several accounts that indicate that John Adams' last words were, before he died, "Jefferson lives," or "Jefferson survives." Because of rotten politics, and yes, we had that back in the early 1800s, in the late 1700s, just like we do today. Jefferson and Adams had been extremely close friends in the early years during the Revolution and the first few years after the birth of our country. But because of politics, they literally became enemies, and that's a crying shame. But in their later years, they became close friends again, and were writing letters back and forth to each other. And they, well, there was a love between those two men. They had too much in common. But anyway, and that's kind of neat that last words were "Jefferson lives." Okay. My story about the 4th of July. Let's jump forward a couple of hundred years and then some. 50 years ago tonight, July the 2nd, 1970, I'm an 18-year-old kid. I just graduated from Longview High School, and I absolutely thought the world of T.G. Field, who was our high school principal. All right, now mind you, I've already graduated in the end of May, and now it is second day of July. I get a phone call from KFRO radio, and which I forget which one of the guys it was, but I answered the phone. He said, Sammy Satterwhite? Okay, I can say Sammy telling the story. Don't you dare call me Sammy. It's Sam to the whole world, okay? All right. He said, how would you like to spend the 4th of July in Washington, D.C.? I said, man, wonderful. You know, I'm an 18-year-old kid who has basically been nowhere. We use the 4th of July as a day to bale hay. People were off work, and so they could come pick up their hay. That was square bale days. And so 4th of July, we worked as harder than almost all other days during the summer. My father was a patriot, but patriotism and everything else takes second place to work. That's where I got a lot of my, well, that's where I got my work ethic, was from my dad. All right, anyway. How'd you like to spend the 4th of July in Washington, D.C.? Man, I'd love to. He said, well, here's the deal. Ross Perot, who many years later ran for president, y'all know who Ross Perot was. Ross Perot was one of the guys that was expected to foot the bill for the celebration in Washington. He and I'm losing it, Danny. Bob Hope, the comedian, were I was told, were chairman of Honor America Day festivities in Washington that year. And Perot supposedly said, well, if I'm going to foot the bill, I'm going to name the guest of honor, and that's going to be students from Texas. All right, so here's this giant extravaganza in Washington, D.C., and students from Texas had the special seating at the event that happened. There was a stage built on the steps of the Jefferson Memorial, and then seating right in front of it. I was told, all you got to do, you be at Gregg County Airport, our local airport here, at 4 o'clock in the morning on July the 4th, day after tomorrow. Mr. Perot is paid for everything except whatever you want to spend on eats and whatever you buy. So I had some cash on me, and I met at Gregg County Airport, and the place is just packed with older 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, and back up. The radio personality, he told me that I had been nominated by Mr. Field, the principal, to represent Longview High School at this event. Well, you know, that was special, but I had you know, very special feelings for Mr. Field, and apparently he did for me too. Anyway, all right. Load up on a plane. Back in those days, I don't know, it was either 727 or 707 in 1970, but every seat was taken for this charter flight from Gregg County straight to Dulles in Washington, D.C. All right, Perot's people had selected 2 places, Evaline for West Texas, Longview for East Texas. So kids had arrived at Gregg County Airport early that morning from all over the eastern half of Texas, and the same thing happened in Abilene for West Texas. All right, we landed at Dulles. Didn't even have to go through the airport. They had buses out on the tarmac, so you walked down off the plane, walked into a bus, and they dropped us off right behind the Lincoln Memorial. All right, as the bus stopped, there was a driver and another adult. The other guy had a box of badges, and he just announced, said, you know, as you get off the bus, I'll give you this badge, and that is your ticket to your special seating tonight. It'll be right over in front of Lincoln, and just be here at, I don't know, 6:30, 7 o'clock, whatever the time was. Well, we ran all day long, you know, the Capitol, the White House, the Smithsonian, you know, all the things to do in Washington. We were trying to pack it into one day. All right, I've always tried to be early to whatever I do, and so I was way early to start to get down to my seating. You pass the Washington Monument, the reflecting pool, and then the other end of the reflecting pool is Lincoln. All right, the crowd kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger during the day until when I finally started making my way down, you could barely get through the people. All right. In later years, I've been told that our deal, those students from Texas, and the whole deal that Perot and Bob Hope put on was a counter-protest to the protesters in Washington who were there protesting Nixon and the Vietnam War, and you know, it was supposed to be a huge deal. Well, I never saw a protester. I saw people just like me enjoying the day and going down to see the show that night. So, you know, maybe the media in 1970 was a lot like it is right now, where the truth is not exactly what you see on TV. Okay, all right, I make my way down through the crowd, and instead of having a fence around the special seating, they had policemen were shoulder to shoulder. I mean, 200 or 300 cops cordoning off this area. And I just pulled that badge out of my pocket and showed it to a policeman, and he grabbed me by the arm and said, "Let me escort you to your seat, sir." Man, at 18 years old from Judson, Texas, I had never had anybody say sir to me, so I thought, man, I must be special. Well, he walked me down through the seating, and I got to sit front row center for this production. The stage is up, elevated maybe 6 feet higher than the level of the chairs that we were sitting, and so I just kind of could lean back and just watch it all, and it was something beyond wonderful. Anybody that was anybody in entertainment in 1970 was live doing their thing for this patriotic production, and it started off with Billy Graham. You know, everybody knows who Billy Graham was, and it was wonderful to be 10 feet away from him and watch him deliver his remarks. And then all these other folks, you know, from Red Skelton and Bob Hope on down, do their thing, you know, with a patriotic twist to their singing or dancing or speeches or whatever they did. Anyway, it was it was a life-changing deal for me. And this thing ended with Kate Smith. Now, a lot of you older folks know who Kate Smith was, but you've all heard the saying about it ain't over till a fat lady sings. Well, apparently she was a fat lady. She was a big woman, and she could belt out some beautiful songs, but her song was God Bless America. And I got to watch and listen to that live, and you don't know how inspiring that was to an 18-year-old kid. Wonderful. And then when she got through, then the most wonderful fireworks you could ever imagine were shooting from right behind Lincoln. They're just all just above us. Anyway, I get to experience that, walk back around Lincoln, walk back on the same bus, go back to Dulles, fly from Dulles back to Longview, Texas, and I'm home about 25 hours after I left Longview. And at any rate, from that day to this, 4th of July has always been my day. Like most of us, you know, I'm patriotic. My family has always been patriotic. We show reverence to things that should be revered. I just hope that continues in this country. Now, as far as my younger family, my kids, my grandkids, I don't have to worry because we teach them right. I hope you teach yours right, and hope that everybody has a wonderful 4th of July weekend. Thank you. Okay, Danny?
I think we're still on.
Okay, if we're still on, I hope we're off.